Okay, hey, good morning. Well, as we promised this, that today's going to be a little bit different as we have a parenting panel with, I think, three very special people who have just spoken into my life, into my family's life, and that I want you to go ahead and meet them. We are going to kind of try to divide our time. I've taken a lot of these questions that were kind of written in, and we're going to divide them into some categories, and we're going to try to spend as much time as we can with these and just hear from them and just get some practical thoughts and ideas. But as we get started, I would love for you guys to just kind of introduce yourself, what kind of ministry, job, or calling that God kind of placed you in, and then just kind of what season of parenting you're in at this point. And I'll start with you.
So I'm Phil Holcomb. I'm a child and family psychologist. I have a private practice where my beautiful wife keeps the business going, Gidget Holcomb. Some of you may know her. I've been coming to Westwood since August 2013. In terms of the parenting phase of life that I'm in, I'm actually now in a consulting phase of life in which I only provide consultation to my adult children upon their request. Or at least I try to. And I'm also a first-time grandparent now to little Florence Holcomb, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm Marcia Hallman, and I'm married to Price, and he and I were married 13 years before we had kids, because I really think God was up there going, yeah, maybe no, maybe not. But we have two kids, Scott and Lindsay you see around here, and Scott you'll see around the world because he's in the military, so we never really know where he's going to be. And we work in the Awana program, and...
Season of parenting, you got how many grandchildren?
Lindsay has 2 boys, Scott has 2 boys, so we only do boys. So if you want girl advice, too bad.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
My name is Crystal Mazuka, and I think I've been here for about 10 years. I currently work as a content editor with Lifeway Christian Resources, working on kids' curriculum. Actually, what kids are learning right now is something that I developed, which is just super fun. And I have a 20-year-old who is here now, so that's an interesting parenting phase of how much do I parent and how much do I let him figure things out. If you want to ask him a great story, ask him about when his debit card got frozen and how he resolved that all on his own, which was amazing. And I have a 13-year-old who looks like he's also a 20-year-old because he's 6 feet tall, so yeah.
Judah, should we give you a microphone just in case you want any kind of rebuttal upon? No, he's saying no to this. Okay. Maybe next week we'll have the kids come up and correct anything that we have to say.
It's a good idea.
You know, there's one of the categories that we got was a lot of marriage and parenting. And I think the first question is just, there's so many demands to parenting, especially in our culture. And today, there's just so many expectations. How do we prioritize our marriage in all of those demands and all of that time? Philip, can I just start with you?
Yeah, so I think the number one thing in marriage and family life is that we make sure that we structure our families so that time and energy can come together with great frequency. So Psalms 90 verse 12 says, "So teach us to number our days that we may apply hearts unto wisdom." And so if we're going to have anything to invest in our marriages, we cannot be so busy with our kids that we don't have time for our spouse. And so what can happen is we can get so invested in getting our kids involved in 50,000 things that we're running around like crazy, and then when it comes time when the kids are in bed, we're exhausted and we have nothing for our spouse, and our spouse gets the crumbs. So our marriage is what is going to continue after our children go. So we have to arrange our lives so that not only do we have enough time, but also when we have time, we have energy to fully invest in that time, be fully present with our spouses.
Thank you. Any other thoughts to that?
So one of the things I would say is I almost feel like my marriage is more of an emphasis than my kids are, if that makes any sense. because the better my relationship is with my husband, the better my parenting is going to be. And if you disengage your husband from your child rearing, there's going to come a point where you're going to really wish he was involved, and then there's a lot of, why aren't you involved? Well, it's because when they were 1, you weren't competent enough to give them a bath and dress them, so now that they're 16, I want you involved, but I've already disengaged you. So I would say it's more important for him and I to be on the same sheet of music, because there's times I don't know how the boy brain works. I know it doesn't work very well sometimes, but I actually really, there's times with Scott when he was a teenager, I'm going, he's doing blah, 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 and Price is like, he'll be fine. And then there's times where his daughter, which is his kryptonite, is working him like a drum, and it's like, knock it off, Lindsay. This is not gonna work. So the better he and I are together, the better our parenting is.
And what a great example that you show to your kids, who are hopefully going to one day leave your house. And in many ways, they're going to start emulating a lot of the things they saw in marriage. And so when you've taken time to prioritize your marriage, I think that not only gives them a great example, but it kind of shows them that they, that the parent should be, your spouse should be a priority, even more than your child. And sometimes our kids they need to know that they are not the center of this home. And so it's important for us to show that example. You talked about just, sometimes as the husband and wife are not always on the same page when it comes to parenting. How do you kind of reconcile that and find unity when you have maybe 2 very opposing opinions on how to move forward? What's something that maybe you did or?
Well, when it comes to electronics, he and I definitely were not on the same page, because I, of course, was of the opinion that more than 5 minutes a day and your brain would be mush and nothing. But yet, he plays a lot of video games. So when the kids were young, there were some differences in opinions on how to do things. And since I was home most of the time, without disrespecting what he's doing, we're not doing that during the day. And then when there are truly big things that come along that he and I are not on the same sheet of music with, it's a really good place to just step back and go, why are we not on the same sheet of music? And maybe there's another alternative that we've not thought about. And it's okay for your kids to see that you're not always on the same sheet of music. But we're not being malicious with each other, or we're not tearing each other down, and we're not going, well, if I were doing it, I would let you, but your father, him. You can't get into that kind of stuff, because then you're totally undermining the solid foundation of the relationship to begin with.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts to add on to that, Philip?
Yeah, so Proverbs 15:22 says, without counsel, purposes are disappointed, but in the multitude of counselors, they are established. What's interesting is when you read the book of Proverbs, Solomon is not only saying, hey, listen to me, your dad, but he's also saying, hey, listen to your mom too. So I would go back to the time and energy comment. If you're having disagreements that you can't talk through, it might be that you don't have enough time and energy coming together to be able to effectively communicate with each other. I would say respect the wisdom of your spouse. My guess is there's something there. Make sure that you're also not working out power struggles in your marriage through your kids. Make sure you're not doing that either. And then if you really have enough time and energy and you just keep butting up against it together, seek some counsel. Seek out additional wisdom that might be able to help you move you past that.
I love your comment about power struggle, because sometimes we can kind of deflect or try to move that into kind of this argument. And so we really have to look at our own heart about what is really the power struggle. What is the thing here? Is that the goal is to shepherd our kids' heart, not necessarily get our way. And so sometimes we have to submit to each other. You guys talk about wisdom and each other's, and the spouses realizing that, and not, just say, well, it's got to be my way. There's greater wisdom involved. Crystal, as a single parent, how do you model family leadership, especially with an ex that maybe just doesn't believe your values and your belief system, how can you still kind of lead your family well?
Yeah, I think the number one thing for any single parent or a parent who is, you know, one parent is following the Lord and the other one isn't, is to remember that two parents who love the Lord does not guarantee kids who love the Lord. It's not like it's a magic formula that you are now missing a piece. As a single parent or as the solo God-following parent, you still have incredible opportunity to influence. And so encourage yourself in that and keep yourself in that place. But yeah, I really do think modeling is the key. If you were to ask my kids, is there a difference between me as a parent and a parent who does not follow God, I think they'd be able to list 100 things that they think are different. They're always watching and looking to see, what am I going to say? What is my response? How am I acting? How am I feeling? And so I have a great opportunity to show them what following Jesus, no matter what, looks like in my parenting. And so really it comes down to you, like making sure you're in a good spot, in a healthy spot with the Lord, that you yourself are growing so you can model and influence. But I think too, it's a great opportunity to get other godly people around your kids. And it can be something as formal as like, hey, I would love for you to disciple my child, meet with them every other week or so, but also getting together with other families for game night, going out to dinner, inviting them over, and just giving those opportunities for your kids to be influenced by more godly adults. But I would just want to encourage every single parent to say, you are not less than. You are doing a great job as you follow Jesus, and your kids will see it and be impacted by your own faith. So,
thank you. Well, I'd love to kind of transition to a category of discipline. We got several questions that came in about this. And what's your approach to discipline when it doesn't seem to be working? It seems like the same issue just keeps coming up. How do you handle that? Philip, can you talk to that?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to say is always self-reflect. And in these moments, we can often feel frustrated as parents. And so I just want to read Psalms 103:8 says, "The Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and plenteous in mercy." And then also I think about the story of Peter in Matthew 18, where Peter says, "Hey, how many times am I supposed to forgive this joker?" And Peter thinks he's going to come up with something he could tick on a sheet and say 7 times. And Jesus says, "I'm going to come up with a number that he won't bother to count so high for. How about 70 times 7? So it's really important that we keep our frustration in check, and that we approach our children in a way that demonstrates that we are slow to anger and plenteous in mercy. The next thing that I would say is that you need to slow down and take time to think through what is going on so that you can set your child up for success in terms of your expectations. Often, again, because we don't have time and energy meeting together so that we can slow down and think, we can act in reactive kinds of ways. If your child keeps making the same mistake and keeps failing to meet your expectations, there's likely something going on there, and it's not going to be fixed with just more carrots and sticks. So instead, what you need to do is stop, slow down, think through the patterns of what happens, and figure out, how do you set your child up for success from the beginning rather than just waiting until they have fallen flat.
I love that, setting up for success. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about what that may look like as parents try to determine, did I set my kid up for success, or is this necessarily just a heart issue that I need to deal with for them?
Yeah, so one of the things I would say, again, first is start with yourself. Ask, how am I approaching my child? Am I in a teaching mode or am I in a demanding mode? What's going on with me in my tone and my approach? Then the other thing is, understand everything that you do has required development. Everything that you do. Delayed gratification, that's a developmental skill. Some people in adulthood don't have that. They have cars that are beyond their capacity to pay for. They have credit cards that are charged up, right? So even things like that. Emotional control, that's something that needs to be developed. Spiritual development is something that needs to be developed. So we have to understand that things require development. We need to meet our child where they're at in their development. Just like when you're teaching a child how to walk, right? You don't go out there expecting that your child's just going to get up and run. No, you hold their hands, you walk with them between your legs, and then over time, they're holding themselves up, and you back up just a little bit, and you hold your arms out there, ready to catch them, and then you get back farther and farther and farther. Our children need scaffolding like that in order to be successful, and you need to be, as a parent, in a place of time and energy so that you can creatively think through the scaffolding your child needs in a given situation and circumstance so that you set them up for success.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that sometimes when people are like going back to that question, when does discipline isn't working, is that sometimes we think that the correction is supposed to fix the issue, where the correction is really supposed to hopefully help them to just pause and recognize that maybe there's something that they're butting up against. It's really the heart, right? And that's what we're looking for, is how do we speak to the heart? How do we coach them, setting them up for success so that they can learn how to move forward without maybe falling down, right? And that is the goal. Marcia, how do we move from disciplined children to disciplining teenagers? There's different techniques, there's different styles. What are something that maybe you used in your home to kind of pivot from how you corrected Scott and Lindsay as children to teenagers?
So I think one of the things that kind of what you sow at 2, you're going to reap at 12. So if you can kind of start your consistency when they're young. And I found that one of the things tying into what he's saying is you need to be clear in what you're actually asking your kids to do. So I have a very literal son, so if I said, it would be really nice if you went and cleaned your room, do you think the room's going to be cleaned? No, because I didn't say, get up off the couch now, walk into your room now, and do this in your room. If we don't set clear boundaries as to what our expectation is, if you don't do that, then this is going to happen. And I don't know about you all, but I found that sometimes my discipline for my kids was more of a punishment for me than it was for them. It's like grounding. I did that once, forget that, because that actually grounds me. So we're not doing grounding. We're going to find something else that works. But direct disobedience is what you want to deal with. But in order to have direct disobedience, you have to have a clear request of what you're asking. So childish irresponsibility is not disobedience. Defiance and disobedience. So, and it was kind of funny, I won't mention any names, but it's my oldest son. I would tell him, Scott, I want you to do this or this would happen. Now, what did I say? And he's like, I don't know. And legit, at times, I really believe he did not know, because it just didn't go anywhere. But he at times would say, I don't want to say, because he knew that if he repeated it back to me, he knew that I knew that he knew exactly what I was asking. And then it was direct disobedience. So part of the communication factor starts right here and it takes a lot of the fuse out of discipline then. Because I already said what I'm going to do if you don't do what you're supposed to do. So I don't have to wonder, oh, gee, he didn't obey. Now what do I do? I already know. So being very clear and thoughtful in what you're really asking him to do.
Thank you.
And then that translates to the teenage years.
Yeah. Crystal, do you have anything to add to that as far as teenage correction?
I just think that the teenage years are when the kids really start suffering consequences for some of those choices that they make. We always respond with love, reminder of like, I love you, and love is not conditional on your obedience or your disobedience. God loves you. However, you did this, and now you have to reap the consequences. I think about those wonderful, wonderful late nights. Oh my gosh, I have a project due tomorrow. When a child is young, we might stay up with them. We might even run to the store, get the supplies and everything. When they are 17 years old, you say, I'm so sorry. What are you going to do about it? And either they get the bad grade or they use their own money and ask DoorDash to deliver the markers and the poster board that they need, and they get it done themselves. But yeah, I really think that the teenage years are a good time to start letting them suffer some of those consequences we might have protected them from when they were younger.
As parents, how do we balance grace, right? Christianity's all about, grace and needing that grace. And so how as parents do we reconcile the idea of showing grace and mercy, while also there's times where they need truth and justice. And this every time that we don't discipline, are we being bad parents? Are we being lazy? How do we get to the point where sometimes they need grace, sometimes they need truth? Or what does that look like to you, Philip?
Yeah, so I say grace always, 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 and applied consequences sometimes. So there are consequences that happen to us in life that don't need some explicit application of a consequence from another person. So for example, you tell your child not to climb up in the tree, the child climbs up in the tree, falls out, and breaks their arm. You don't need to add an additional consequence. They probably have learned that it's a good idea that when mom or dad tells me not to climb this tree, that it may not be a good idea for me to climb this tree. So I also think that before we apply a consequence, we need to ask ourselves, as parents, have I done a good job of setting my child up for success? If I have not set my child up for success, then instead of giving my child a consequence, I need to dial back and I need to think through, how do I set my child up for success? I think the time when you apply a consequence is when you know that that child 90% of the time can be doing what you're asking them to do without you having to have scaffolding and structure for them. Only when you absolutely know that they have the skill and can do the skill under a variety of circumstances, when they're too tired, when they're too hungry, when life is busy, can they still do that skill? If not, then you should again back up, figure out whether or not you have set them up for success before you apply a consequence.
The goal is heart transformation, right? And I think when we see that forming in them, then yeah, encourage that, cheer that on. And it's when we see their heart maybe getting hardened, that's when you may need to lean in and provide correction at that time.
Yeah, I'll just say, if you want a key to harden your child's heart, keep holding them to account for expectations that they are unable to meet. Then you will do a great job of giving them a heart of stone. So I think it's in Ephesians where it talks about fathers, do not exasperate your children, right? Give them justice when it's really not justice, rather than grace, and you will make their heart hard towards you. So if you want to keep their heart soft towards you, set them up for success at every opportunity.
Man, I keep going back to kind of that first question where you're talking about time and energy, because we need to know our kids well to be able to know if they are set up for success, and are we giving them right expectations. If we're not spending time, if we're so busy going here and there, then it's really demanding. But if we have those moments, that margin, then we can have those conversations.
Amen.
Well, okay, so we got a question about bullies. And I'm interpreting this question about their child is being bullied in their house or maybe at school, and just want to know how can they work through that with their child? What are some ways that you can coach them? Marcia, any thought and idea there?
Well, it is kind of interesting to think about bullying within your own house because that truly can happen. And we had a boy and a girl, and one of the things that we established in our house with the boy was you do not ever hit a girl. I know she's annoying. I know she pushes your buttons. I know this, but you do not ever hit her. And a lot of times when they're having conflict with each other, I hope it was God inspired, I'm not sure, but the more I left them to work out their own relationship, the longer lasting the peace was. But in that conflict, if whoever hit, they were the one in trouble with me. So you don't hit each other. The other thing that Price and I established in our house before we were even married is you do not make fun or pick on anyone's physical attributes, maybe their not their mental attributes. You do not take humor below the belt. That's kind of where I grew up, was below the belt humor, and that hurts deeply. And so one of the rules we established was you are not going to pick on anything about a person that they can't help. Now, if you trip and fall, and that's fair game. But so with the kids, it was like, you're not going to call each other stupid. I remember one time getting in Scott's face and saying, "This is my daughter that God gave me, and you will not talk to her like that." And sometimes you just kind of need to jerk the chain a little bit and just say, it starts in the house. You don't bully in our house. You certainly don't bully outside our house. And the interesting part is Scott became Lindsay's biggest defender out there. If there's a guy who's like a little overbearing and a little he called one guy from college and he's like, "You will take my sister's phone number out of your phone." And he's like, "Why would I do that?" "Because I'm in college, I play football, and I know where you are." So, that as a parent makes you feel good, to know that, yeah, they may fight and they may get all over each other like a dirty shirt, but at the end of the day, he's got her back.
Yeah. What are some lessons that we can teach someone if they are maybe being bullied in school, and how do we speak into that? Crystal, what would you say to that?
I think there's a couple of things. Number one, I think it's a great opportunity to pray together. If a kid is feeling bullied at school, to spend time praying for that bully. We always know the phrase, hurt people. Chances are that person is bullying because something is going on. Sorry. I think number two, to just encourage the kids to not retaliate. If a bully is bullying you, the answer is to not be mean back. The answer is not to gossip or get up a posse who's going to defend you. We want to continue to be kind and to be godly. But I definitely think it's important when needed to get adults involved. Kids should never feel like they have to handle something like that completely by themselves in isolation. They're children. And so we might not be at school to be able to protect and defend them, but I think it's important that teachers know. I think it's important that administration knows that that's happening, because there may be a situation where they need to step in to ratify that or sit with the two of them to help them talk through whatever is going on, but to definitely not feel like they have to figure it out all by themselves.
I think it's a teaching moment in the sense of helping them understand who they are in Christ, that they are fearfully and wonderfully made, that God made them exactly the way that they look and they are gifted, and so to be able to speak that truth into them. I love talking how you said of just sometimes it may just be praying and caring, loving your enemies, and that is really difficult, and sometimes that starts a lot earlier than what we wanted to, right? Like we don't expect to have an enemy at third grade, but this enemy presents itself. How are we going to love them through it? Philip, I know that you kind of read this a little bit differently, this question, and just what if necessarily your child is being a bully? How would you handle that if that's the direction this question was going?
Yeah, so everybody knows the golden rule, right? So that comes through Luke 6:31. So if my child is being the bully, of course I want to teach them that as ye would that men should do to you, do ye also to them likewise. What we don't want to do is make other people in the house subject to the bullying behavior by not giving them a way to get away from the bullying behavior. If the child has a high frequency of bullying behavior, I would let that child know, hey, I love you. It's my goal to teach you how to be kind. It starts here within the home. If you are not able to be kind to your siblings today, then you will be with me wherever I am at in the house at all times. And you will be my hangout buddy in every moment, because I will not allow your siblings to experience you acting towards them in ways that you don't like them to act towards you. So you can hang out with me. You can fold laundry with me. You can do dishes with me. You can do yard work with me while you are working on developing the skill of treating others well. Kids will bully for all kinds of different reasons. Sometimes it's out of boredom, and in their selfishness, they're seeking that dopamine hit by picking at their brother or sister. Well, hey, I got an answer for you for that. You get to hang out with me. Aren't you so lucky? Right? And the other thing I would say is that we as parents, we need to be aware, am I engaging in bullying behavior towards my children? Do I shut them down? Am I short with them? Do I respond to them with anger? Do I pick at them? Am I critical of them? Are they acting out with their siblings what I model? And if they are, then work on getting yourself in check as well.
So again, going back to looking at ourselves and being a positive and godly example, and then also, but just clearly communicating the expectations and even the consequence if this doesn't happen. We're giving you the choice. You have A, freedom, or B, you're hanging out with me, depending, but you have the choice right now to determine. Let's talk about friendships and influence. Crystal, what do you do when your child wants to befriend someone that is probably doesn't align with your beliefs or your values?
That's a really good question, and definitely one that in my house we've wrestled with. And so I think number one is we don't ever want to tell our kids that somebody is unlovable, unlikable, or unredeemable. We never want to communicate that there is somebody that because of choices that they're making or what they believe they are less than, because that person is still somebody fearfully and wonderfully made, somebody that God sees and knows and loves. And we have an opportunity to help them see that and know that. And so I would definitely say, first off, the first step should not be completely cut off the relationship. I think the first step is to have conversations. I've noticed that when you spend time with this person, you are different. You act different, you speak different, it seems like you think different. And I just want to go back to our values. That was a sermon you gave a few weeks ago about having values as a family. Like, I want to make sure that you stick to our family values no matter what. I think number two is if we are worried about the influence of somebody in our kids' lives, then we invite that person into our home. We try and take that position of being an influential person. So we might say, well, no, I'm actually not okay with you going to the movies with that person, but if you guys want to come to the house and watch a movie, we can all do it together. We can spend that time together. But then there might actually come a time when you have to say, this relationship is not good for you. And so I'm going to ask that we cut it off for a time until things change. Either that person changes or you change. But I care more about you and who you are becoming than trying to make you happy and being able to keep this relationship. And so I definitely think that it's situational, circumstantial, depending on what is going on. But I definitely think that we have a couple of options, again, for being able to turn that heart back to values. And I think especially with teenagers, it is always important that we give a reason of why we are saying this, not just, I don't like that person. But what we are hoping to see will come as a result.
Yeah. Sometimes we have children who are deeply introverted. They just struggle to build a social group. You may struggle to get them into a youth group type setting where people can invest and pour into them. How would you kind of help parents who are just, their kids just don't want to go for whatever reason? How do we kind of give them those gentle pushes to help them be in a healthy environment? Marcia, did you deal with this at all?
No, never. Hi, Lindsay. So the one who runs Summer Hummer and stands up here and acts like a complete and total idiot sometimes would be my daughter. And yet, as she was that person as an elementary, middle school, high school, young adult, that is who she was. She lived with a lot of fear, and she lived with a lot of insecurities. She was looking for the perfect friend that could come alongside and help her be about her. And it was an interesting time because she literally was afraid to do anything. And she didn't go to youth group. She didn't go. We didn't make her. Church was never an option. We never got up on a Sunday morning and said, are we going to church? Are we not going to church? We went to church. So that was never an out. But we did not force her to go to middle school. We did not force her to go to high school. She never did Summer Hummer because she was too afraid. So what we had to do was, if I could say anything, your child's heart is not yours to save, to fix, to repair, to make it happy or sad or anything else. The heart is not yours. Now, you can set your child up. Obviously, you can make things more difficult, or you can make things a godly path for them. And we had to, at times, push her away because she was looking to us to meet that need in her of insecurity and fear. She was a believer, and I can remember one particular time where she came into our room, and she's not fun to sleep with, so that didn't happen. So it's like, take her back to her room, because, coyotes were going to come through her window. That was always a big thing. So we took her back to her room, and it's like, okay, God has his angels around you, and God is real, and God is powerful, and God is mighty. And you need to either press into that and believe it, or decide you're not going to believe it. Now, this is maybe too much for a fourth grader or a fifth grader, but it's like, you need to get your Bible out, and you need to get a word from God. And she had Post-it notes all over the mirror in the bathroom about God is her rock, God is her salvation. And as we fast forward to adult life, she's talked about how God has met her in those places. And laying in her room, I still kind of go, okay. She's like, Mom, I could see red eyes up in the corner of my room. And so being scared, she pulls the covers up over her head, and her hand is cold, because if you ask her, her room is always too cold or too hot. Her hand is cold, but she's holding the blanket over her head, and Jesus took her hand, and her hand became warm. So, do you want your kid to know that Jesus holds her hand? Or do you want her to know that, okay, come into my bed, I have a blanket, I'll protect you, I'll keep you warm? You want your kids to press into Jesus with all that they're worth And you don't be the life preserver, let him be the life preserver.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we've got time for just a couple more questions. So I just want to move into grandparenting. And how do you handle relationships when maybe the grandparents are have a different style, different way to raise kids, or they're trying to maybe give some unhelpful advice? How do you kind of reconcile all of that while the kids still, do they get to see grandma, grandpa? Like what kind of boundaries do we create here? Philip, do you have any thoughtful advice on this?
Yeah, so I often find that when people end up seeking out a behavioral health person, it's often because they're struggling to switch from one phase of life into another. Heading off to college, that's a phase. Getting married, that's a phase. Having children, that's a phase. And our relationships then also go through phase changes, right? When we are parents and then our children become grandparents. So both the grandparents and the parents are going through a significant phase of life challenges. I would say always be careful, as a new grandparent myself, always be careful about just throwing off grandparent advice, because grandparents have been alive a long time, and they might know something that's worth hearing and that's worth considering. If you are coming into a situation in which you strongly disagree with how grandparents want to handle something, after listening and hearing if there's some wisdom in there, respectfully, clearly, and consistently share your concerns and let the grandparents know, hey, this is the way that we're looking to do things with our child. We would really like for you to get behind that. If you can't get behind that, that's okay, but that might impact under what circumstances we feel like your grandchild can be with just you and not having us present. So always respect that they can have some wisdom, that there's something to hear. Be respectful in sharing your concerns, and clear, and be consistent.
Just to kind of turn that question a little bit on its head, if you're a grandparent and you want to have more influence, or you're maybe concerned about how your children are raising your grandchildren, how would you come alongside, or how do you enter into those kind of conversations? Marcia?
So one of the things I would say is you are not the parent of your grandchildren. Just take it. And we struggle with that sometimes because two of our grandchildren live in our backyard. And so it's very easy to move into a parenting mode. And it's really unacceptable when their parents are actually there. And, Rich and Lori and Price and I mean, these kids are fortunate. They have 4 grandparents all right in their grill. And we have had to really realize that when they actually have real life parents there, it does not need to be us. And so we need to learn our own boundaries. Yes, we may have wisdom, but there's a time and a place where it's like, go figure it out yourself. And I've told my kids, all of them, don't ever travel together because I don't want to raise your kids. So make sure you're always safe, at least one of you. And you need to realize that you actually, in some weird way, parented your grandchildren by the way you parented your children. And by that point in time, the way you parented your children, it sets the course for generations after you. And I say that because I feel there's an urgency to be smart in your parenting and godly in your parenting. But I also say, if you didn't, don't beat yourself up over that, because God's grace is sufficient. God does know that there is not a single family out here that is the perfect family. And like Crystal said, you could have 2 serious God chasers and they could have kids that are running wild as can be. So God's grace is new every day. And guess what? Acts says that God chose the time and the place that you would be born. So kids, if you don't like where you were born and you don't like where your parents are, guess what? God put you there. and you are there strictly by his hand. And the reason he says he put you there is so that you would seek him. So, I told, again, my illustrious son, I like to pick on him a lot. I don't care if I am the worst parent in the world. You will not stand before God and use me as an excuse for your sin. It did not work for Adam. It didn't work for Eve. It didn't work for anybody since then. You are accountable for your own sins. Now, God also says that if you cause one of these little ones to stumble, it'd be better for you to have a millstone around your neck. So we have a very serious job to parent our children in a godly way, but I am not your excuse for your sin. Now, do you truly believe that sin is a choice? No one can make you sin. You choose it yourself. So when you hear that little 2-year-old go, he made me mad, no, you chose to get mad. When you see that 16-year-old that says, you made me mad, no, you chose to get mad. Did I present you with some hard circumstances? Yes, I did. Take it back to the bullying. You hurt my feelings. Yes, but did that give me license to sin myself? No. So what was the question?
On that note, Philip, do you have anything?
No, just a quick plug. Les Tays teaches a class on grandparenting. If you haven't had that class, it's a good class. Maybe seek him out. It's a good class.
Thank you. Can we give them a hand for their time? They are going to be in the lobby, and so if you have any questions or if there's something you disagree with, they will be happy to talk to you out there. But I just appreciate them, and I think you can see why they've just have meant so much to me and my family and helped shape our kids. As we kind of just come and wrap this Purposeful Parenting series up, I just want to end with just a couple final comments. And in Proverbs 22:6, it says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. And when we look at this verse, this word train is the Hebrew word hanak. And this word is not used very often in the Old Testament, but when it is used in the definition of to dedicate or to initiate. All right, and so it is someone dedicating a certain object in their home. It is dedicating a certain object in the temple. And so in the context of parenting is that Solomon is calling us as parents to dedicate ourselves and the training and the wisdom that we have to initiate conversations, to shepherd our children well, to point them in the right direction. That we are called, that when we have been given these children, is that we have a job to do. And now, all of these extra hobbies and all that kind of stuff, yes, they're great, they're fine, but they need to be in a lower priority, because when we become parents, we are now called to dedicate, to initiate, to train. I mean, to think about it this way as an athlete is that when we think about all these professional athletes, they didn't just become a professional athlete because they got lucky or because of happenstance. They became a professional athlete because they trained, because they showed up early for practice. They went through all of the drills and acted like it was game day. They ate well, they slept well, they learned from their wins and their losses, that they developed, that they used all of their body and all of their time for the one purpose of growth. And if they got lazy in one area, it could be the difference between winning and losing the race. And as parents, we have to understand that we can't get lazy in any one of these areas. That we can't minimize our responsibility. That we can't just think this is just naturally going to happen. That we can get distracted. Like the goal, Proverbs 22:6 says, is that the goal is not just managing our kids' behavior while they're in their home, but to raise them up that when they leave our house, that they are following the Lord. See, the goal is not that we raise good children. The goal is that we raise godly children. And I want us to show that the average parent has 936 weeks with their children. 936 weeks. Now, when we bring our babies home from the hospital, we think that's a lot of time. In this jar is 936 marbles. And you look at it and you think, man, that's such a lot of time. That's a lot of time to invest. That's a lot of time to speak into. That's a lot of time to go on daddy-daughter dates. That's a lot of time to do all the things that I want to do. But as time goes by, as week after week, we take a marble out of a jar. Without a lot of fanfare, without a lot of speaking, just marbles are leaving the jar. And when they turn 9 years old, all of a sudden, 50% of the time is gone. 50%. We can't get distracted. We can't lose focus. God has called us to train, to dedicate, to initiate, to lean in. That we have to speak in, come alongside and shepherd them relationally and morally and spiritually. That God has given you, parents, these children to be stewards over. These little people that he loves deeply. He says, I want you to invest, to speak wisdom, to raise up for me. So parents, we have a choice. Are we going to just allow the world to speak in and just allow their life to just naturally just move on? Or are we going to set and commit ourselves to dedicate, to initiate, to train our children? I just want to take a moment. I want to take a moment to just use this moment for us as parents to commit. To come, if it means coming down to the altar and praying together, that we do that we dedicate. As Joshua says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua declares it. He puts a tent pole in the ground and he says, listen, from this point forward is that you know that the priority of our house is one thing, and that is Jesus Christ. As parents, sometimes we need to say that. We need to come together and dedicate that. And so I want to just give some time. Husbands and wives, maybe you just need to come and pray and dedicate your kids, your family to Christ. Maybe that you're a single parent or you're trying to raise your kids with someone who doesn't share your values. Maybe your prayer is as you come forward, or maybe it's at your pew, is that I'm praying for wisdom, I'm praying for strength, I'm praying for peace. Because every time I feel like I'm speaking truth, as I'm feeling I'm being undermined or undercutted, God, I need your peace on my family and over my kids. Grandparents, maybe your prayer is, I just want influence. I want to speak life. I want to speak truth. I want to love them and influence. I want to just somehow come along. Will you give me wisdom, God, on how I can do this? To come alongside of my kids, my grandchildren, to be able to help them, to raise them in a godly way. Can we just take a moment and just pray? You can stay at your pews or you can come down. But I pray that this 7 weeks is about committing. That we say, I am training, I am dedicating and initiating. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And after a few moments, Jack and the team will come up and lead us in a song. Let's pray.